Hey guys, this is Bob Ross, and this is Office Hours with Bob Ross, episode 25. Today's episode, what I would like to discuss is maybe a challenge that you could implement on yourself during this time of when we really can't get out and about and play with others or do our performances. So why not challenge yourself during this time? I hope that all of you are doing really well through this and that you are already challenging yourself to develop as a musician or even to make connections that maybe have been lost over the years. Maybe your schedule has been quite busy and now you have a little bit of time to adjust and reset yourself. And just the same as probably with all of you, we all have, I'm sure, days where it seems a little bit harder than others to try to get through the day and think about ways to keep ourselves going. And for me, I can speak from experience over the last week. There's been ups and downs for sure. Not knowing whether or not some of these gigs in the future are going to be canceled or not, and trying to keep the motivation to push ahead. So what I would like to do is provide maybe a few things that you could implement into your daily life as a musician, as far as the musician part of it, and try to take a look at a couple of things maybe that could even spark some ideas just because of the limitation. And if you remember, in the past I have talked about limited creativity. Well, I want to take this concept, since we're already having limitations that are being put on our lives right now, why not go ahead and set something up in your musician aspects, the facet of your life, and let's implement a few challenges there. So the first thing that I would like to toss out is an idea I've mentioned before, and I'll mention it again. Why not? Because of all the streaming services that we have, it is so easy, and I find myself also getting sucked into this too. It is so easy to go in and out between all these different artists and all these albums, and not even listening to an album all the way, but listening to a song and then skipping to another song, just constantly in this state of what feels like a state of flux, right? We're constantly shifting our attention, and we can't, for some of us, maybe we can't even listen to one song all the way through before we have an idea, hey, well, this reminds me of this song, or yeah, I remember hearing this the other day, let's put this on, And for some of you, depending on, your age, maybe you remember a time where you didn't have that access to this unlimited reservoir of music. At least, I know for sure that I didn't have that. And when I would get a CD or a cassette tape, I would just listen to it nonstop. And especially cassette tapes, I wore those things out to where they wouldn't even play anymore. Or do one of those things, maybe some of you guys remember this, where you would play the tape, maybe it got messed up, and the tape player would eat it up, and you managed to get it back out, and you wound the tape back up, and you go to play it, and in the middle of the song it would play the reverse side, and then would go back over to the normal side, so or the side you were listening to. So, I was listening to things so much that I memorized it because I just kept listening and listening. And I think that that's something that if you listen to what some teachers say or professionals, in the jazz spectrum or any other genre of music, is that when they really want to work on a style or particular artist, to get that artist in their heads, or a solo, what they do is they take that particular artist, song, solo, a phrase, and they listen to it nonstop over and over and over. So my challenge is on the listening side, maybe a couple different things that you could do. Pick one artist, only one, and go through that artist's catalog and only listen to those albums by that artist. I want you to really listen to them and see how in depth you can get with their music. And you're probably going to be tempted to go off and listen to something else, but don't allow yourself to do it. Keep listening to that one artist and really explore the catalog from the early days up until now, if it's an artist that is currently on the scene. If it's not, then even if it's an artist that has passed, one from the past, the decades before, then go through and start the same thing. Start with their catalog and work your way through it, and see if you can listen and understand where they were coming from and how they developed over the years, and pick up some influence from that. The other thing, for those that want a little bit more challenge, take not only one artist, but take one album and listen to that album. Limit yourself to that one album for the next week. See if you can do that for the next week. If you're ambitious, try a couple weeks, but over the next week, limit yourself to one album and really get to know that album inside and out. Constantly put it on. Anytime you're going to listen to music, put that album on. And if you want to push that extremity even more, pick one song and listen to that one song for multiple days in a row, up to a week, and see how invested you can become in that song, learning every part that's on there as far as being able to recollect it and sing it in your head, or maybe even sing it out loud. Maybe grab your instrument and start figuring it out. And that works for transcription purposes too, right? So another thing that I would encourage you to do is to take one tune. We're constantly, I think, in the jazz world, sometimes we have this feeling of you got to learn more and more and more tunes, and you're constantly trying to push ahead and learn maybe more than what you can actually grasp at one time, just for the sake of trying to keep up. Take one tune, and for a week, 2 weeks, if you want to extend it beyond that, that's perfectly fine too, but see if you can take the one tune and work on really getting inside of that tune. Know it really, really well. Set up some exercises for yourself. And if you need help with any type of exercises that you can implement on a tune, then you can check out a course that I did on musiclessons.com, where it's called Navigating the Changes. And what I do is go through a few different ways that I navigate changes on a tune of mine called The Journey. And I can put a link to that way you can check that out and maybe get some ideas. But basically what you want to do is go through a tune and see if you can, you got to learn the melody, so make sure you're learning the melody, and then make sure you're learning the harmony. Depending on if you play chords or not, that will differ as far as like what your responsibility is in order to learn the harmony. But in any case, if you're not playing chords, then you can still outline those with the arpeggios, right? And then set up a limitation of using only the bass notes to the tune. Maybe play a bass note and the melody if you're able to do that with your instrument. Or maybe record a bass line with your instrument and then play the melody over top. The other thing is, which a lot of us have done, and it's talked about, is putting a tune through 12 keys. You do that. You could also try to take the tune and explore it even more, to where maybe you don't just play the tune in 3/4/4/4 if it's one of the standards, and instead you put it in an odd meter. So really play around with the tune, really get inside the changes, really understand the tune, and maybe take that tune as also a source to come up with writing an etude for yourself. Like a solo that you could play through it. So you're really investing a lot of time into the tune. That way you can really understand it, get inside those changes. Another thing that you could do, take one scale. Just explore a scale. Lately I've been going back and reviewing over the half whole diminished and trying to really break down any sort of barriers that is in my playing when I'm trying to explore the fretboard. Try that out. Take one scale, go through, if you happen to have a freeze pedal or a loop pedal, or you could even pull up like a cello drone on YouTube, just do something that, rings out a tone, that way you can hear it in relationship to what you're doing. If you don't have that, actually even before that, whether you have that ability to do that or not, which I think a lot of us do now, if you don't, or if you want to start before that, just go through and just improvise with a scale. Just go through and explore the scale. Don't try to play the scale in time, although you want to be able to do that. But to really explore it, don't just run the scale up and down. take the scale and explore. Play it in intervals. Try to play patterns through the scale. Try to work on playing intervals throughout the scale. Work on something that is going to break down the barriers. That way it's not this strict sense of I have to play it in time and I have to turn on my metronome and make sure that I would play ascending, descending. You want to break past that, make it musical. How about trying playing chords, like just one chord? Take one chord and run inversions of that chord, or an arpeggio as well if you want to do that. And this again depends on the instrument that you're playing. If you have an instrument that's a chordal instrument, then this works really well. Take a chord that maybe you were having some difficult times in the past, like you were comping on a tune, you're like, man, when I was on the gig, I really wish that I was able to go through and have another voicing for it, because it seems like I'm kind of stuck with this. See if you can take the chord and find different inversions, or maybe take some of the notes that you would play and change them up a little bit. Keep the quality of the chord. Like, for example, instead of playing, I'll take a basic one. Instead of playing a major 7 chord, see if you might change some notes in it, turn it into a major 9, major 13, put the sharp 11 in. See what you can do, a 6-9 chord. Just try some different things to come up with voicings that will work. That way you have even more accessibility to that chord when you're playing and you want to either comp for yourself or comping for someone else or harmonizing a melody or a solo. And then you could continue this even with the arpeggios too, going through and taking a set arpeggio and limiting yourself to only playing the notes of an arpeggio. And you could do this again where you take maybe a C major 7, right? And you're only going to play the notes to a C major 7 arpeggio, and you're going to go throughout your instrument, the range of your instrument, and maybe you skip around playing all the notes. And this is a time where you could bring the metronome back in and set a limitation of, I'm going to put the metronome on at 60, and every time that it clicks, I am going to play only the notes from the arpeggio, and I'm going to skip around, not ascending, descending lines, but skip around, and then turn the metronome off, make some melodies with it, put on a backing track, make your own, put on a drone note, whatever you need to do to explore. That way you can really get accessibility to a certain sound and not have these limitations. And this is a perfect time to work on that, because sometimes we get a little caught up and we try to do so many things at one time, and I feel you on that because I do the same. So guys, it's again, we're going through some tough times, I know, and at some point we'll be back out there playing again. And we want to be able to make it the best that we can when we get back out there. We don't want to lose our chops. We want to be able to maintain that and even excel beyond maybe where we were prior to all of this happening. So I wish all of you the best, and I hope that in the weeks or months to come that things get better and better, and that you're implementing some things into your practice. You're getting better with this. You're taking care of yourself. And I also want to encourage you to keep the questions coming to me. If there's any particular topics that you want me to address, I would be happy to do that. Questions you want me to respond to, I'd be happy to do that as well. I want you to also stay tuned. There's some things that potentially coming up over the coming weeks, so I'm going to do my best to work on more and more material to put out there. Don't forget that you can find material on musiclessons.com. That's where I put my courses and lessons. You can check those out. That way you'll be able to have something maybe to put into your practice to push you on beyond where you are now. Thanks for listening, guys. Again, Office Hours with Bob Ross. Thanks for joining in, and I hope that you can join me next time.